John, we got a great guest this week. I think we both enjoy covering Sean Manaea when we're over at Citi Field. He's such an interesting guy, and we're glad to have him this week on the show.
Yes, Sherman and Jon is a terrific guy, and even more important, he's been a terrific pitcher for the Mets. Another great move by David Stearns, and a lot of interesting stuff happening with the Mets, who are now in playoff position. They have an MVP candidate. There, dare I say it? Yes, he is. Lindor is, and we're happy to talk to Sean Manaea about all things Met.
Yes, and I think you and I are going to talk about the MVP races, both in the AL and the NL. Lindor, Judge, Witt, Ohtani. We'll also talk about the promotion of Jasson Dominguez, and we'll play hit and error at the end if you stick with us on the show with Joel, Sherman, and Jon Heyman. John, another week of baseball has gone by, and I think one of the hotter topics that continues to be had is how do we look at these MVP races in both leagues? I think the National League one, John, is particularly interesting because we're going to have to decide if a player who literally never plays the field but performs in a way that we've never seen offensively before is the MVP over somebody who will play over 1,400 innings in the field quite often in a spectacular fashion in Francisco Lindor. John, how do you size it up right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still a debate. I got myself in a little hot water by talking about the fact that I do believe that it is debate and mentioning the West Coast bias, which is obviously well known and quite obvious throughout the history of the MVP. I said that a little tongue in cheek, but there is no East Coast bias. I'll say that. And look, the Mets have never had an MVP winner. And, we didn't have WAR existing back then, but now they do have a way to calculate WAR in hindsight, retrospect, however you want to look at it. Tom Seaver was the best player in the National League 3 times, and that doesn't even include 1969. He never won. David Wright had the better WAR than the winner in 2007, which was Rollins, and same thing with Beltran in 2006 over Howard, and by quite a bit. And they didn't win. So I don't know if there's an anti-Met bias, but there certainly isn't a pro-New York bias, as some would claim, or an East Coast bias. But I'm going to stick with my West Coast bias because it seems to upset people. But I do believe, full disclosure, I do believe Ohtani's winning, as I wrote. People ignored that part. And I think he's likely to become the first DH ever to win. But we still have time to play. And Lindor's been fantastic. I mean, if we see... Those of us who've seen it up close and seen how he's helped rally the team, and I do count all that, the leadership and the defense and every inning of every game, he's been terrific, and he still has a chance.
Yeah, John, I'll just say this, is I'm glad that WAR exists so that there's an attempt at least to quantify what the total player looks like. But again, we know what Ty Cobb's batting average is, and we know what Francisco Lindor's batting average is because it's the same calculation through time. Right now, Baseball Reference, it's Ohtani, Chapman, Lindor, Marte. So Lindor's behind Chapman in Baseball Reference. In Fangraphs, it's Lindor leading, then Ohtani, then De La Cruz, then Marte, then Chapman is fifth. So the fact that I want to use that, I'll say this, John, and I think it's a discussion point also. I think Ohtani's going to win, and I think he's going to win easily because he's going to have a 50-50 season. He's the most famous player in the world. It's going to win, whether it's West Coast bias, it's bias for the numbers. But, we are talking about a guy right now, is Lindor's played the 3rd most innings in the field in the sport. It's over 1,200 innings now. By the time we get to the end of the season, it will probably be over 1,400 innings. I was at the game on Saturday. The Mets simply don't win if Lindor is not a great shortstop. I don't think Jose Quintana survives the 3rd inning. He's getting outs in the 7th inning. So Lindor is doing something that Ohtani simply can't do. And I think because OPS is so heavily weighted towards slugging and I can make an easy argument Ohtani should be the MVP. It's the easiest thing to do. But the whole player, I would ask you this question, John. I just asked this of, we're both at MLB Network. I asked it of Dan O'Dowd. I said, if you had to play this season and you knew everything Francisco Lindor gave you, and you knew everything Shohei Ohtani gave you, and you knew everything Aaron Judge gave you, and you knew everything Bobby Witt Jr. gave you, and you didn't know anything else, but you had to form teams around them, which two guys would you take from which guy would you take from each league? And he said he'd take the two shortstops. And I'm saying, well, doesn't that make them the most valuable players if you're taking the two shortstops, understanding the value of shortstop and the fact that they're great at everything, as opposed to like Judge is great at a lot of things, but not everything. And Ohtani isn't playing the field. I think it has to be a discussion point.
Absolutely. And Witt, same thing. I don't think it's completely over. I do think Judge is the favorite. If it was held today, he would clearly win the award. But I mean, Witt's been incredible both ways. Defensively, he's at least as good as Lindor and maybe even better. He might be the best shortstop in baseball. He's one of the 2 or 3 fastest guys in the game. He's got 30 home runs. He leads in batting average. I think he has a case. I don't think he would win, and I'm not sure that it's fair. But we look at the spectacular, we look at the historic, and Judge has got over 50 home runs. He's got a big lead in slugging and OPS. And on the other side, Ohtani's got the lead in all those categories, and plus he's got the stolen bases, and he's probably going to be the first 50-50. He's already the first 46-46 guy. So, I think those stats still kind of win out over WAR. And, the WAR still slightly favors, slightly by a hair to Ohtani and Judge. If the WAR was reversed and it favored Lindor and Witt, I'd give them a little bit better chance, and maybe it will with weeks to go. But, Witt's been amazing. He's the best all-around player in the game. And if someone wants to tell me he's the MVP, just like with Lindor, I'm not fighting it. People are now saying I'm New York biased because I'm arguing for Lindor having a case, but I think Witt also has a case. I don't write that for the New York Post at this point, or I haven't yet, but that's a Kansas City story probably, but it certainly does affect New York too. If I had a vote today in the National League, I'd have a hard time with it. And, I'd probably go with Ohtani at this moment, but the case is definitely there for Lindor. Same for Witt.
Yeah, I mean, and just again, Fangraphs actually has Lindor leading in WAR right now in the National League. And it's again why that stat should be some pixels in a picture as opposed to the full picture, because you have two different viewpoints of the statistic. When you say people, keep in mind, it's 12 idiots on Twitter are upset at you. Like, let's not act like there's a bunch
of. It's not 12. It's hundreds.
It's hundreds. Okay. It's angry people with time who are looking for grievance every place they could find it. I think there's an award for Ohtani. It's the Hank Aaron Award. It's for the best hitter. Right. I'm not sure that it's the MVP award, and I think he might be the MVP. I just think we have 3 weeks left, and narrative probably matters a little. If Lindor's great down the stretch and the Mets get in to the playoffs, I think it will help them. Let's just flip over to the other side of town, John. The Yankees finally pulled the trigger on something that's been a subject for us the last few weeks, talking about if Jasson Dominguez would come up or not. They finally did it. It felt like the most moment. I don't know what the Yankees were waiting for. I know Alex Verdugo, when we're broadcasting here, John, it's the morning after he hit a home run. It was his second home run of the second half. He's literally been about the worst player in baseball for 3 months. He's
good defensively. Offensively, you're right. And you had some good stats in there. 278 slugging since June 15th, the worst in baseball. Everybody in the media was clamoring, and I know they had a meeting before September 1st, and there were other people in that front office other than Cashman and Boone who wanted to call up Dominguez at that point, and they waited. And I don't think it's only because Cashman made the trade and Boone advocated for him. I think they're legitimate lovers of Verdugo beyond what you probably should be at this point.
John, you mentioned the defense. Look, again, if we're going to look at WAR, he was a minus 0.6 WAR player since the middle of June, which includes defense. So, and the defense is left field defense. And while that's very important in Yankee Stadium, it's not a shortstop. It's not a catcher. You just simply can't not hit for 3 months the way Verdugo does and play left field regularly and get regular. I mean, he had become an automatic out against lefties, and he still was playing against lefties. I think the Yankees still have an issue against lefties moving forward because, I think Dominguez's stronger side is his left side. It looks like Cabrera has given up even hitting right-handed. He hit lefty against lefty as he's a switch hitter who hit lefty against lefty again last night. I think it will be an issue moving forward. The question is, you're thrusting Dominguez, who doesn't have a lot of playing time, into a pennant race. But it's a little bit to me, John, like when they brought back Anthony Rizzo, you didn't need Anthony Rizzo to be Anthony Rizzo, the guy who was a championship player. You needed him to be better than DJ LeMahieu and Ben Rice, who were like at about a 60 OPS plus for first base. So LeMahieu's been so bad. Like, can Dominguez bring? Verdugo hasn't stolen a base since June 15th. He's got 3 homers since June 15th. So if it's just a threat of power, Dominguez stole a base and stole a run last night, right? There was a throwing error. So that's one more stolen base than Verdugo has since June. And he hits even close to league average. It's a gigantic, boost up to where, what they've been producing out of that area.
Right, and you had to see whether he can do it at the major league level at this point to see whether he's the guy for the playoffs as well. I mean, he probably should have been called up September 1st like we all expected and thought he was going to be, but there is time here to see whether Dominguez is ready for the major league level. He will be a good major league player. They held him out of Soto. They held him out of the discussions with Snell and everybody else, and they do believe in him. I do believe, even though I do think it was about Verdugo. I think that they have an unreasonable love of Verdugo, and that's the reason this was delayed.
They had an unreasonable love of Gary Sanchez as a catcher, as Gleyber Torres as a shortstop, of Isaiah Kiner-Falefa as a shortstop, of Clay Holmes as a closer. They do until they don't. And it feels like, John, you mentioned a thing where you said you don't think it was just because they traded for him that they held on. Whatever forces them to hold on to whatever would be a standard period plus X seems to me to always be a standard period plus X for them. This reminded me so much of Kiner-Falefa 2 years ago, right? Like I was telling you early that season, he's got the yips. He's got the yips in big spots. They kept showing me metrics about how great he was on defense. I said, do you guys actually watch the freaking games or not? Like he's got the yips in big spots. And it's like, I don't know how you could have watched the games for the last 3 months and still been loyal to the idea of Verdugo is your best. If he was your best solution, you were essentially saying, we think Jasson Dominguez sucks.
Yeah, well, I don't believe they think that. They're a little bit on the stubborn side sometimes. You were right on Kiner-Falefa. You said that early. He's a very good utility man, but he's not the Yankee shortstop, as we found out. I think on Holmes, Holmes has been a little bit unlucky. Eventually, I think they made that move at the right time. They waited too long on a lot of these others, but I got it with Holmes. I mean, he was an all-star. I mean, even if you don't think he deserved it, he was certainly consideration for an all-star at that point, and he did make the team. So I got it with him. I did think they waited a little too long on some of these others, as you're right. And LeMahieu, now I guess he's hurt. I guess that he's on the IL.
Hip impingement.
Well, I read that he has a hip injury, but they gave him they've given
him plenty of rope at this point. You notice they couldn't pinpoint yesterday when the injury occurred.
Did they pinpoint which hip it was? I don't know.
This one.
I don't know.
That one.
I don't know. Well, it's a big contract, and who knows? We don't know.
We know what's happening. They don't want to eat the contract now. They're going to look at it again in spring training next year. That's what we're up to, right?
Yeah, I think so. I'll say this: he probably isn't 100% because how bad he played. What?
Who is?
Okay, so I guess. Well, not too many, but they've been very patient with guys, and it's particularly with a guy with a big contract. I get it. I mean, it's hard for me to envision. I don't have $30 million, but it's probably not fun to rip it up and throw it in the garbage. So
after they've already did Hicks, eat his contract. I don't think they want to eat LeMahieu quite yet either, and I think that's why we are where we are. John, one of the places we are is getting ready to talk to Sean Manaea, one of the most interesting players in baseball, and one of the reasons the Mets are fighting for the playoffs. We'll talk to him if you stick with us next on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman. Joining us this week on the show as our guest is Sean Manaea. It's perfect timing. Sean is having a great year and is pitching better now than he's pitched all season down the stretch, becoming the Mets ace just at the same time as the Mets are rising and playing so great. And because of that, Sean, first of all, thank you for joining us. I almost don't know where to start. Do we start with how well you're doing or how well the team is doing? I know you're a good team guy. Let's start with that.
Okay.
Your team is playing its best since the last 80 games. The Mets are the best record in the sport. Why? What clicked 6-7 weeks into the season?
I think we played the I think it was the Dodger series, just got swept by them. And we all had a team meeting, and it was just kind of like all right, this is kind of like a turning point for us. We can either just let the season go by and not really do anything about it, or we can like take a look in the mirror and be like, all right, some things got to change, and we got this. We are actually a very good team. We just need to figure some things out, and it's just kind of slowly been happening. Since then, I forget when that was, with like May or maybe early June or something like that. But since then, it's just kind of like slowly guys have just kind of been finding their stride, figuring things out, and then once that happens, it's just kind of, it's like a domino effect. Like one guy starts feeling it, then the next guy does, and the next guy does, and then it's just been a really fun ride so far. And I think that's just kind of what's happening. Everyone just starting to believe in each other and believe in themselves, and you can just see kind of like that confidence rise, which has been really cool to see.
What about you? I mean, the first half you were really good, but you weren't a 7-inning pitcher, which is rare today. I mean, it's basically Zach Wheeler and Logan Webb, and there's a few guys who are 7-inning pitchers. Severino has become one too. Mm-hmm. What is the key? What has enabled you to pitch 7 innings in the vast majority of starts lately after not doing it basically through the first half?
Yeah, I think I really simplified everything, and that's really what it's come down to. Simplified my mechanics, simplified my thought processes, simplified my like kind of routines in between starts. Really, that just kind of helped me, kind of clear my head when I'm on the mound and not overthink things. And really at this point, it's just like attacking guys. I don't really have a lot of different pitches. It's just kind of 3 basic ones, and with that, just attacking guys, having that confidence to go after guys, and not be scared to like pitch the contact or stuff like that. And, basically just, see what you can do with it basically. And, having some good outings, having some good, success, kind of, like I said, just stuff tends to build off each other, and, outing after outing, just definitely been getting a lot more confidence in my stuff, and, who I am as a pitcher. And, going deep into the games, that's something I've always wanted to do, like on a consistent basis. And, like you said, guys like Wheeler, Webby, they do it year after year, game after game. And it's like, why can't I do that? And it just, I think all starts with like the belief kind of thing. And, here we are.
Sean, just to put a finer point on the question John brought up, your last 8 starts, the Mets are 7-1 in those starts. You have a 2.81 ERA. In 2 of them, you pitch 6 2/3 innings. In 5 of them, you pitch 7. So that's 7 out of 8 where you've gotten into at least the 7th inning. And I know I saw you did a really interesting thing with Laura Albanese of Newsday the other day, where she drove the subway with you to the ballpark. And and you mentioned maybe lowering your arm angle a la Chris Sale, and maybe that having some positive impact on what's happening with you. Can you maybe for the layman explain why you did it and what it allows you to do?
Yeah. So, Chris Sale is obviously a very, very good pitcher. And it's not just because he has like that weird arm slide. I mean, there's a bunch of things that he does really well, but he, to me, like kind of like leaned into that, like, like lower arm slot. And something for me that, I grew up doing was like trying to like raise my arm slot. So I like, I've kind of always been like somewhere around here, but every time I would do it, it would just kind of slowly revert, down lower. So I feel like I was always just kind of like fighting myself, like doing that. It was like I was on the fence, like trying to go up here, but my body naturally just wants my arm to come down here. And then after he pitched against us in I don't know, like 2 months ago or whatever it was, I was like, you know what, let's just try throwing it down there. Let's just lean into that like natural arm slide of mine, or at least what feels natural to me. And ever since then, it's just kind of been um, feeling a lot better. You know, like I'm naturally wanting to go down there, and I'm not like fighting myself to be like trying to find a different arm slot. So for me, it's just like leaning into that natural thing and just going with it. And it's really freed me up. I feel like I can throw everything for strikes now, and everything's just coming out of the same slot too. So that's kind of just where I came from with the Chris Sale thing, and yeah, that's pretty much how everything has been happening so far.
Yeah, Joel mentioned your subway ride, and I've seen you on this. When I write quickly, I sometimes will see you on the subway. I'm pretty slow, so I haven't seen you that often. Do you often take the subway? And how has New York been for you? You previously played for 3 California teams. You're from Indiana. What did you think when you signed with New York? And how has it been living where you live? I think you live in Manhattan somewhere because I've seen you on the subway. How has it all been for you? How have you enjoyed it?
Yes, I take the subway pretty much every day. Um, love New York. Like you said, I was in California for 8 years. Met my fiance out there. Very much felt like a California guy. Yeah, so coming to like the East Coast was very not shocking, but it was just like a different vibe out here. But yeah, so far been loving it. Just like the energy of the city, you know, so many things to do, all times of the day. Um, like the fans, the crowds, the people I've met have been super cool to me. And yeah, I mean, so far I've loved every single second of it. Even the ups and the downs. Coming to New York is, all I heard was going to be like very, very challenging, which it is, like any place. But I think coming in prepared for that was, definitely helped. Knowing what was going to happen and kind of like the expectations on us as a team and me as myself as a free agent sign. I was like, all right, this just already feels different than it did in California. And yeah, just been running with it, been loving it every single second of it. And just super everywhere we're ever now. And I forget what the other questions you asked were, but yeah, hopefully hopefully that
That
answers
was
some of
it.
it.
You covered it. You covered it.
Well,
All good.
All right,
well,
cool.
I wonder if the way to follow that is, Sean, in this age, everyone is looking for somebody who might be on an arc up and looking for, if you're a team, for a bargain. You ended last season back in the rotation, pitching well. The narrative was you added control of your sweeper, and that really helped you late. Can you take us through free agency? Were the Mets clearly the team, or were you deciding like other teams saw the end of that season and were like, yeah, we really like that. We think we could build upon that. How did free agency go for you?
Yeah, so in the 2022 off season, there were a few teams. That was my first trip to free agency. So there were a few teams that were interested in me as well, and New York being one of them. I went on this trip to Antarctica with Joe Musgrove and a bunch of other people, and it was amazing. And so the Mets had just like called me actually like when I landed in Argentina. I had like a Zoom meeting with some of the guys there, and so like the whole trip in Antarctica was like them or I think it was the Orioles. I was like, this is my first time leaving California. I was like, "Ah, man, should we? Like, I was, it was very, very hard for me and, my fiance. And it was just like, I don't know, like it was, I didn't really know how it was going to go and all these different things. But, we ultimately ended up signing with San Francisco, which was, a great time over there. And then this past year, it was, pretty much New York and that were like really kind of wanted me. I would say like I think after this like second time, knowing that the Mets wanted me, I was like, all right, maybe it was meant to be, So I kind of had that in the back of my head, and then just kind of a bunch of things happen within like a 48-hour period, and ultimately we ended up signing here, and yeah, like I said, it was very like nervous, kind of leaving the comfort of kind of a whole coast, but I think just from what I've heard and just playing here a few times, I was like, all right, we're either gonna lean into it and have a good time, or we're gonna be on the fence and like who knows, but we're here now. So yeah.
Since we're on the subject, that was your first free agency. You're going to be a free agent again, very likely. You don't have to say that, but I mean, you have an opt-out and you've had a spectacular season. Is there anything we can do to convince you to stay in New York? We like having you around. And San Francisco's a place where you've been a couple times, the Bay Area, at least a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, is your fiance from the Bay Area?
Yeah, Oakland.
Okay, so I mean that's also Bob. Any thoughts? Anything we can do to convince you to stay here rather than go back to California?
I've loved every single second here. I don't know, we'll just see what happens, but really wouldn't take too much convincing, I would think. So yeah, I've loved it here. So yeah.
Yeah. See, we're doing Steve Cohen's work already, John.
We don't have any money though.
Sean, you mentioned a few things. We mentioned adding the sweeper. I believe you went to Driveline even at some point along the way here. You talked about in July changing your pitching style. Is this, you think, a modern thing, or are you the kind of thoughtful pitcher that would have always tinkered? Or can you tinker in a way now because there's so much information to tell you what the tinkering can and will do?
Yeah. So yeah, I've been to Driveline for a couple of years now. I also worked with a guy, Dean Jackson, this past year, who's definitely helped out a lot. Done some really good work. And yeah, the whole like Driveline thing for me has kind of been like the understanding of like the kind of like analytics side or like the metrics of like a pitch, which I didn't really know when I was in Oakland, San Diego. Even I kind of started to get a grasp of like what pitch shapes are supposed to look like and all that stuff. So with all that being said, it's like when you know what pitches like look like, then you can like kind of start to tinker. So at Citi Field, we have the pitch shapes next to the velos, which is, I think every ballpark should start doing that. It's such a good thing to have. Once you like understand, it's like, oh, this thing's moving like 20 inches. It's like, wow, that's crazy. Like stuff like that. It's like, important to, as a pitcher, in this day and age, it's like, yeah, like you can tinker around with pitches. What is it doing? Like on the TrackMan data, is it moving like I wanted to? And then from there, you can be like, all right, mechanically, did I look the same as like my fastball? And that's kind of how I judge everything. That's where I ask like Hef, our pitching coach. Like yesterday, I was throwing a pen. I threw a fastball and then I threw a changeup. And to me, like for my feel, it looked like it felt like two different kind of pitches. But for his perspective, he's like, yeah, I couldn't tell a difference. And I was like, all right. So I have a pitch that actually like metrically looks good. Mechanically, it feels good. And it also like looks the same. So with those three things, it's like, why shouldn't I have the confidence in game to be like, all right, I should throw this thing and throw it with confidence, throw it for strikes, and just see what happens. If it gets hit, it's the big leagues. Stuff like that's going to happen all the time. These guys are obviously very good, so I'm not like thinking, like I'm a bad pitcher or something like that. Because it got hit or something like that. It's like, all right, maybe what was the sequence? Like where was the actual pitch? Like when it ended up, was it a bad location? stuff like that. So yeah, I think like the tinkering stuff, like once you understand all those things, it kind of like makes it a lot easier. Whereas like when I was a rookie, I was just like going based off of feel for everything, which, could be good or it could be bad, depending on how things go, So yeah, hopefully that answers that.
I want to ask you about Lindor. Joel and I think that the MVP is still a discussion. I know the stats certainly favor Ohtani, who looks like he's on his way to 50-50. Tell us about Lindor. I assume you think he's a candidate. I know I get some guff because I say he's a candidate and there's a West Coast bias. No offense. I know you like the West Coast too. And that the Mets have been underrepresented in the MVP. They never had an MVP. Tell us about Lindor and what your thoughts are on the MVP race.
Yeah, 100%. I think he's part of the discussion. Tony's obviously doing great things. So, to even be compared, and that is like already an accomplishment in my eyes. And what Frankie's done this whole year, is just like the consistent. It's once he started going, like the Mets started going, and that says a lot, about one person, what they can do for like a whole team, a whole franchise. And not only has he, been like what he's been doing on the field is just kind of like the stuff behind the scenes too, just like the consistent behaviors, the consistent just work ethic. You see that. You see him put in the work, you see him putting in working on the field and in the cage, all these different things, his routines. And he's just been like the same like guy when we weren't playing well. So like that stuff is like really cool to see, when a leader like that just isn't doing stuff for show. It's just like that's who he is, and he like actually wants to see the team do well. And for me, like obviously like defensively he's unbelievable. They don't just hand out platinum gloves to anybody. And actually seeing him play every single day, I see why he's got, I think, a couple of those. So, I think like defensively, offensively, he's been doing some amazing things, for a long time now. And it's just, I definitely think he can, or is definitely part of the MVP discussion for sure.
Sean, forgive me. I just like to back up one more time to just because I think fans are going to be interested in your free agency. Obviously, you've quickly become a fan favorite here. You're 32. You've shown durability. You're having as good a year as you've ever had. You're left-handed. You've shown you could do it in this marketplace. What is going to be vital to you? Is it long-term being in a city? Is it going to the high in the market as you could go? What do you think frames your free agency where you have a little more heft than maybe these two previous ones?
I think, I don't know. I think I kind of just want to be, put in a good spot with me and my family, and whatever that means, whether it's something longer term or something like that, I'd be fine with. I'm not really looking to break any kind of records or anything like that. I think, for me, it's kind of, playing the game and just doing what I've been doing like the last couple of months. I want to be doing that for the next few years, like that's the goal. And, the money and the years, I think, is just a byproduct of just doing that and the consistency. So, for me, I just want to stay healthy and help this team win. And, I can worry about all that stuff later.
You mentioned helping the team win, Sean. Look, there's 3 weeks left. The Mets, if they say it's crazy. I looked at it this morning, Sean. San Diego has 81 wins, Arizona 80, you 79, and Atlanta 78. 78, 79, 80, 81. I mean, it is bunched. Only 3 could get in. There's some obvious stuff like health. But do you think there's a key issue or two that gets you guys over the hump to whatever that number is going to be to get you into October?
What do you mean? Like a key
Like,
issue?
yeah, like, do you think, you know, like your defense has played so much better, and now even with Iglesias playing every day, it feels even better. Do you think there's a key person, a key phase of the game that just has to rise up here for 3 weeks to make sure that you get in?
I think what the pitching staff, not just the starters, but the bullpen too, relievers. I think what we've been doing, the last couple months has been incredible. We're, in my eyes, one of the best rotations in the league, so one of the best bullpens in the league. And I think, like you said, try not to say the health of everyone. But I think like as a staff as a whole, we're kind of like one unit, and like Paul's just went down. Tylor stepped up last night. Like that's kind of like what's been happening is like it's next man up, just doing some really cool things, and this offense has been unbelievable too. It's before you blink, it's like it could be 8-0 or something like that. It's like that stuff can happen, and the consistency is really like the only thing that's up in the air. But other than that, I think we have all the pieces. We have something to do, something incredibly special, and I think if we can do all those things, there's definitely nothing that can stop us.
You mentioned Jeremy Hefner's name before, and you also mentioned that the pitching staff has gotten better as the season goes along. We often see a pitching coach as the guy who walks to the mound to talk to a pitcher when things aren't going so great or he needs a breather. What's the influence of Jeremy Hefner on the staff going from kind of like A to B this year?
F is incredible. Like honestly, he's a top-notch guy. First of all, just as a human being, he's a very nice human being. Just incredibly down to earth. Unbelievable human being. As a pitching coach, he just kind of, like, from my perspective, it's kind of like we'll go back to the Chris Sale thing. I just felt like every time I've had like an idea, he's like, yeah, sure, let's try it. I have some crazy ideas out there. I'm very creative, I guess. He's just every step of the way, he's just been like, yeah, let's try it. Let's do it. Let's see what happens. So like the freedom to, try new things and be like I do this drill before I warm up where I like basically put the catcher in like both, like home plates, and then I'll throw it to him, and just kind of like a weird thing. He's like, yeah, dude, I love this. Like, it's helping you. It's like, we're doing this. And I'm like, all right. So just to be able to have the freedom, the creativity to try new things has been such a welcome sight for me. Explains things very well. He just does all the pitching coach responsibilities. Great human being, and I've loved every second I've had with working with Huff.
Sean, some of us thought you'd be a playoff team right from May when we saw the team, even if we were struggling early. What do you think now? Are you confident? Are you guys going to get in? You're one game up right now.
Yeah. We made it this far. There's definitely no reason why we can't make it in. We have gone through the fire early in the season, and we made it out, and we're here now. We've got an unbelievable team, top to bottom. Everybody contributes in some way, and that's what it takes. I think we all believe in each other. We all believe we can do something incredibly special here. And there's no reason. We have all the pieces. We got leaders on the team. We got the offense. We got defense, the pitching, coaches, managers. I think, this is a very special group, and, some I'm very, very special, like happy to be a part of, like I've said many times before, but 100%, I think we could do it. Not saying it's going to be easy. There's a lot of really good teams in front of us in our tails. So we definitely got our work cut out for us, but there's definitely no reason we can't believe that as well.
Sean, I think that you summed it up well. I think anybody who's watched us day to day and seen the rise, especially since that team meeting in May, June, knows this has been a team effort, that there's been a lot of contributors, but I don't know that there's been one more important than you along the way as you've kind of risen to the state of ace. You go again Wednesday in the matinee against Bowden Francis in Toronto, and this is the day before. So John and I do appreciate you finding some time for us. And thank you so much for all your time, because you're such a great guy to deal with in the clubhouse as well. All the best the rest of the season and perhaps in the playoffs as well, Sean.
Thank you so much, guys. Happy to be here, and appreciate you guys. Thank you.
John and I, of course, thank Sean Manaea for joining us on the show. John, hit or error?
I'm going to go error for the Minnesota Twins, a team that I am always a big proponent of. And I don't know what's going on with them as we do this. Now they only have a 3-game lead, and they are certainly in danger of losing that final playoff spot. It is over Seattle, Detroit, and Boston. We just saw Boston. They couldn't do anything right, and they're still in the race. Seattle, they fired their manager, not because they thought they were going to catch lightning in a bottle, because they thought the season was over, I assume. And Detroit, they sold Jack Flaherty. They were a seller. And they're all in the race, thanks to whatever's going on with the Minnesota Twins, who are just falling apart at this moment.
Did you see what Alex Cora said? He said, "I don't know how we're in the race, but we're in the race." And so he's like, "Let's just try to get in." I thought that was fascinating. John, I'm going to give an error, and you're nice enough. You referenced my column online at nypost.com. I'm going to go off the board a little bit. Is the first week of the NFL season dynamic kickoff? What the hell is that? Like, dynamic? Why do we use their language?
You really went off the board.
Like, what? We're language guys, John. Like, it's one thing if you convince idiot fans to do this, but the members of our business who fall into they call the first weekend of the playoff super wild card weekend because the NFL wants it. It's wild card weekend. It's the wild card round. What's super wild card? What's dynamic kickoff? What's dynamic about that kickoff? It's boring. Like, how about call it the boring
What did they do? I don't even understand what they did. And I've never even seen.
By the way, can we stop using football as an adjective? We're watching the game. We know it's a football field. We know it's a football player. We know he's a good football coach. Just call him a player, a coach, in a field. What the hell's going on? They're destroying language over at the NFL besides brains.
And what about, I mean, I barely watched. I saw a little bit. I didn't know what the heck was going on with those kickoffs. I never heard anything about this. They've ruined the kickoff. I don't get it.
We changed the intentional walk rule in baseball, and it was like we were changing a passage from the Bible. People went so crazy. They just changed the rule, make up a word, call it dynamic, and everybody goes along for the freaking ride.
Yeah, where's the criticism? The only one I saw criticize it was I sorry to invoke his name. We're not political on the show. Was Trump? And I'm sorry, whatever. I shouldn't even mention anybody's name political, but he did criticize it. I don't get it. I don't understand what was wrong with the kickoffs. Were they dangerous? I don't know if they were dangerous.
I guess so. You know what's key now though, John? It's dynamic. That's the key thing. It's a very dynamic.
I'm not going along, but that's not dynamic. It's boring.
It's not a super wild card weekend. It's not a dynamic kickoff, and just call them coaches, not football coaches. Anyway, I
do like wild card weekend. I do like that. That can be if they want to call that super dynamic or whatever.
How about call it the super dynamic?
Terrible. The kickoff is terrible. It should be the terrible kickoff, and that's it.
Yes.
And
can people in our business not just walk in lockstep with what that league wants?
Well, people who are covering football just they have a great time. They're very happy people. They don't have to do anything. There's no game at night. They have to write on deadline twice a year. They're thrilled to have this job, and
we're going to have people after us now. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's seriously.
No, we know the difference. I used to cover football back in the 80s.
It's a very easy job, and they're very thrilled about it. So there's no criticism.
They have a super dynamic.
We're not as thrilled. We're not as thrilled. We have 120 night games, earlies, running, sub, For people who know what that is, that's 3 columns a night, all on deadline. You know, that's
No
a little
whining.
different job.
We accepted the job. Just it's
It's
you know
a different job.
John, you know who's super dynamic? Tommy Hogan, our producer. He helps us
Right. All right, let's get out.
Yes. I'm getting us out before we get in any more trouble. You're gotten political. You kill football writers. You're doing a great job.
I mentioned the name. I didn't take a position.
I went off the beaten track with football. I mean, this show, it's really off the tracks. It'd be totally off the tracks without you, Tommy. Thanks. The New York Post YouTube page, give us a view, Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Please give us a 5-star rating, leave a review. John, we're in the dog days. I think we're both going on the road with the Mets sometime soon. We know that because they're got big games late in the season. And if you stick with us, you'll follow all of it on the show with Joel, Sherman, and Jon Heyman.